Welcome to Straight Up. I am your host, Mark Petroni. Appreciate you tuning in, my friends. Well, the week began on a wave of optimism amidst talk of an imminent trade deal between Canada and the United States. Just a few days ago, Prime Minister Carney confirmed a possible deal on steel and aluminum. All of that evaporated over an anti-tariff TV ad launched in the United States by Premier Doug Ford of Ontario and paid for by Ontario taxpayers. So while Canadian trade representatives were working overtime to try and hammer a deal with their counterparts from the United States, the Ford government was running its own pressure campaign in the United States, launching a $75 million ad campaign featuring the voice of Ronald Reagan criticizing the use of tariffs.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer.
Now, when he was asked about it earlier this week, Ford sounded pleased with himself, predicting that Reagan Republicans would turn on Trump over the issue of tariffs.
I heard that the president heard our ad. I'm sure he wasn't too happy, but it's real because it was coming from the best president the country's ever seen, Ronald Reagan. So it's very effective. It's probably one of the best ads I've ever seen, and it's coming from Ronald Reagan's voice, and it's going to be focused on right across the country, but also in Republican-held areas, because what I feel, the Reagan Republicans are going to be fighting with a MAGA group. And let's hope Reagan Republicans win.
Well, it backfired big time because instead, Trump pulled the plug on trade negotiations just when it seemed that we were inching closer to a deal with the Americans. The president posted this on Truth Social. The Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. The ad was for $75 million. So they only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts. And based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Now, Prime Minister Carney was asked about it today, but pretty much stuck to talking points.
We have stressed the importance of distinguishing things we can control and things we can't control. Merci beaucoup.
Well, Carney just walked away from those questions. The TV ads, by the way, cherry-picked parts of a Ronald Reagan speech back in 1987. That same year, by the way, Reagan levied a 100% tariff on certain Japanese electronic products. We're talking about TVs and computers, all in response to that country's alleged violation of a semiconductor trade agreement. And by the way, 3 years earlier in 1984, he applied tariffs to Canadian softwood lumber to counter federal subsidies. So look, Reagan clearly opposed tariffs on principle, but he did not hesitate to use them if he felt that other countries were taking advantage of the United States. This morning, Trump posted the following: Canada cheated and got caught. Canada is trying to illegally influence the United States Supreme Court in one of the most important rulings in the history of our country. Well, Ford is reportedly under great pressure to pull the ads in an effort to get trade talks back on the rails, but he's been silent so far today as reporters gathered outside his office. And given this latest blow to negotiations, it looks like Ford badly miscalculated on the American reaction to those ads. The other question is, did Prime Minister Carney agree, or did he even know about those ads? What did he know and when did he know it? He wasn't answering questions today. Meantime, Ottawa is hitting back against both GM and Stellantis with retaliatory tariffs on vehicles. The Globe and Mail quoted an unnamed government source in saying the following: the number of U.S. assembled vehicles that Stellantis can sell in Canada tariff-free will be cut by half, 50%, and 24.2% for General Motors. So we have no confirmation on that story by the Carney regime at this point. Now, we've just received this message, courtesy of what Doug Ford thinks about whether he's going to be pulling these ads or not. When asked if Ontario is pulling the Ronald Reagan TV ad, Ontario Premier Doug Ford tells the Globe and Mail, "I will be running the ad tonight for the World Series." Georgianne Burke joins us. She is a political strategist and communications expert. And Georgianne, it looks like Doug Ford miscalculated badly on the reaction he was going to get as a result of these TV ads. What do you think?
Yeah, well, he certainly miscalculated what the reaction of Donald Trump would be, which was fury. Part of the problem is, I think people don't realize this, that they're actually in the middle of a court case in the United States on the issue of tariffs. And people speaking up like this at this particular time, foreign leaders, is very bad timing. It's a bit of interference in a domestic issue until this gets resolved in the courts. The whole issue around tariffs, whether he's got the right to do it, which of course we know he does, but that doesn't stop people from taking him to court. Until it gets resolved, it would be nice if, Ford and others kept their mouths shut, but they didn't. On top of that, the Reagan Foundation, which was a surprise to me because I I wouldn't see them as the type of organization that would jump on an issue like this and speak out on it, but they were literally livid that they used this speech without checking first if it was okay. And secondly, they said it was taken out of context, that they actually spliced together things that sounded differently than what he actually said. And cannot tell you how many comments I've seen today about things that Reagan actually did that, frankly, I completely forgot about, that changed the course of manufacturing in the United States, including Honda. Apparently, he wasn't so wildly opposed to carefully used tariffs if they made sense. And of course, the environment we're in 30 years later, okay, 40 years later, what am I saying? 40 years later, is completely different than when he was president. We have a completely different economic and world environment than we had 40 years ago. Different set of enemies, a different set of economic issues around the world. And Trump is reacting to it as he sees as appropriate. Maybe Ronald Reagan would see the same thing. We have no way of knowing, and we certainly cannot ask him. God rest his soul. So using his speech like this was, I think, very unwise. And I think that there were two ministers that were scheduled to make announcements today, and they were abruptly canceled this morning. So I sent a note back to my office when I got the email, and I said, I see a pattern here. Only he apparently was brave enough to speak out to announce that he was going to have it shown at the World Series. I'm curious as to what kind of reaction he's going to get for that. He doesn't seem to care what Trump thinks.
Yeah, but what about the trade deal? We were inching close, at least so we were led to believe. Earlier this week, there was talk that a deal was imminent, at least on aluminum and steel. And that would have been a step forward. So the fact that we're kind of dropping the football here on the 1 yard line, fumbling, when we might have been able to announce a deal at this time, I mean, that's got to be a real blow. The other question I would have is, to what degree was Carney read in on this ad? How much did he know? Did he know that the ad was coming out? Did he say, yeah, let's go for it? I mean, what do you think?
So I actually asked that question to people today, and nobody knows for sure. So this is speculation. I'm freely admitting it's speculation. But on the other hand, it's educated speculation from people who kind of know the lay of the land. They would have been surprised if he wasn't aware that this ad was being run. And someone said actually to me, well, we think they probably thought they were very clever doing this, that this was a very clever thing to do. The two of them probably laughed about it. Maybe they're not laughing so loud now. Carney couldn't run away fast enough this morning to get on his plane to go to the other side of the world for another non-treaty meeting. So I feel fairly sure he was aware of it. I don't know that he had to approve it. I don't think that was kind of it. It was like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, and oh yeah, ha ha ha. Trump, he probably won't like it, but whatever, in his face. Well, okay, now you see what's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely blown up in the face of the Canadian side. And who knows how long it'll take to get trade negotiations back on the rails, because Trump sounds pretty angry right now. It may be a long time before we're able to continue our negotiations. What do you think?
I can't disagree with that. Actually, I was in Washington. I think we spoke when I was there for the last couple of days. Got back last night, and I spoke to a lot of people that work in the administration there that were at an event that I was at, including one of the cabinet secretaries. And their number one opinion and impression of Canada is not very good right now. I would say that all of them, especially the cabinet secretary I spoke to, had previously a sort of a positive, not sort of, a positive image of Canada as a friendly, supportive country to the north. But what they're seeing now makes them wonder about a few things. Number one, the seriousness of the country in general. Secondly, are they a reliable partner to the north for us? Do they care about security? Do they care about safety? Do they care about who they bring into the country? Do they care about what's going on in the country? Segue to fentanyl, which is a humongous issue. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but Trump's blowing up boats that are carrying fentanyl. So maybe Canada should think twice about allowing these fentanyl labs to continue to exist north of the border, being supplied by ships coming over with raw materials through the Vancouver port, loaded with raw materials from China for this effort. Working in coordination with the Chinese, the cartels, to create this stuff and then shipping it out again from the two ports, Montreal and Vancouver, all over the world. Aren't we fabulous? A world supplier of fentanyl. This is why there is so much hesitation about the US right now. And their feeling is that they're not serious players, that they might actually be dangerous. Someone said, in response to the Ford thing this morning, oh, well, maybe Trump should just close the border. And I just wrote back, be careful what you wish for, because that could happen. And it won't be about what Doug Ford said. It's going to be about a lot of other things that are actually more serious and more problematic than, this video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like playing footsie with China and
Oh, yes. Oh, my
talking
God.
about strategic alliances with that country.
I just shook my head when I saw that this morning. And I thought, what on God's green earth made you think that was a smart thing to say at this time? So I don't know whether this woman doesn't think before she opens her mouth, or whether they told her to say it, or whether this is what they actually believe. I have no idea. Like, it's stunning.
So what next? I mean, on the trade front, what do we do now? Well, I mean, you're a communications strategist. If you were advising Prime Minister Carney right now, what would you say to him in terms of a course of action?
So one of the problems is that he keeps going places saying he's going to make deals and comes back with nothing. So I would say to him, you need to stay home and take care of business here. I hope no liberals are listening, because this might actually be good advice. And I'm not interested in helping them. But that being said, he should be staying home and dealing with the problems he's got here. He actually had the gall yesterday to inform young Canadians that things are going to be tough for them for a while now. You think things haven't been tough for them in the last 10 years, thanks to his predecessor? Young people in this country feel like they have no future. They feel like they don't want to stay here. They are trying to find ways to get out and go live other places where there's more opportunity. So then you get up and you say to them, oh, by the way, you were right. There isn't anything here for you. It's going to be tough for the next while. So he is a problem. If I don't know who's giving him advice. I don't know what their thinking is. But from my perspective, if he was actually doing his job, which is, by the way, Prime Minister of Canada, not Prime Minister of the world, not Prime Minister of the WEF, not Prime Minister, by the way, of the United States, okay? None of that. He's Prime Minister of Canada. He should stay home and take care of Canada, which is urgently in need of caring right now. If he is this financial whiz that he and his people like to say he is, then I guess probably he should, prove it.
Well, we got a budget coming up.
Yeah, well, I guess
there's
we'll
a budget that's going to be tabled days from now on the 4th of November.
Yeah.
Huge deficit's going to be announced.
Yeah.
And, well, he doesn't have a majority government. He's going to have to rely on votes from somebody else, Obviously, the NDP are the usual suspects when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But from what I hear, if you believe Don Davies, and I'm not saying I do, but they're ready to pull the plug. And people say, well, that can't possibly happen. The NDP has no money. Nobody wants an election. But I'm just wondering if they could potentially end up bumbling and stumbling their way into a vote that doesn't go their way in terms of the confidence motion is going to be tabled as a result of this money bill.
I think it's possible. And the reason I think it's possible is the Liberals are looking around and they're saying, well, the NDP isn't strong, has no money. The Conservatives just lost an election to us, and they believe that Pierre is weak. They believe that. Okay, I disagree. I don't think he's weak. I think there's, as usual, our party has naysayers. The same people, by the way, that have been naysayers for the last 20 years, just by the way. So, except that now the media actually gives them some credit to talk to them, which I think is utterly ridiculous. But that being said, that's what they're looking at. So they're saying, well, our real opposition, or the people who might actually, be willing to help us normally but won't now, they're weak anyway. So now's the time maybe to go into an election and finish them all off, because all they have to do is win 3 more seats and they have a majority. If you think about it, I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but I think it might be possible. Now, on the other hand, there may be seats that they won narrowly they won't be able to keep, because there are people that are having buyer's remorse. So the question is, what are the real numbers out there? And I think that people are just beginning to actually look at what now. We're now 6 months into this government, 7 months into this government, 6 months, whatever it is, and they're looking at it and they're saying, well, what have they really done? Inflation is not any better. Jobs are worse every day. Thousands of jobs are disappearing across the border and to other places. I can tell you that businesses are panicking, even the ones that are still here and operating, the ones that are relatively viable, because they feel that when all of these small businesses and some of the larger ones that move back to the US, or the small businesses that shut down because of lack of ability to function, they're looking around and they're saying, who exactly are we going to sell our products to here? And these are the small, medium-sized manufacturers and businesses in the country that are the backbone of our economy. They're the ones that are really scared and really worried, and they absolutely should be. 100% should be worried. I think that the biggest thing that gave me the greatest laugh is that apparently he intends to put a budget forward that is going to make cuts in the public service, which will be the comeuppance for those. I got to remember this is going to be on the air. Those naives, as I think was the word that I used this morning, which is a polite way of saying idiots, that voted because Mark Carney was a technocrat and they thought that he'd be on their side. He actually is only on his own side. And if they're cutting, it will only be temporary anyway. I told them not to worry. I said, don't worry, he won't really cut. What they'll do is figure out what the attrition rate is, and they'll cut a few contracts, and maybe they'll do some not hiring. Like, I know people that work in the bureaucracy that have kind of hiring in process. They'll just stop those and say, you can't hire them now. They won't do any real serious cutting back, but he's going to make it look like he is. Because they have a gigantic problem with the deficit and the debt, a gigantic problem. Canada's credit rating, I can't believe that it's holding anything, considering our future prospects. Things do not look good. So it'll be. I'm actually, in a weird kind of masochistic way, looking forward to that budget just to see what it says. Partly because I'll be waving goodbye exactly 2 months after that. On the 4th of January, I'll be leaving the country permanently, and I'll be watching it with some degree of sadness for my friends and amusement and joy for myself that I got out of it before things really turned sour.
So you'll be observing from a safe distance, in other words.
Yes, from a very safe distance, yes.
Well, I think the biggest broken promise really is getting that deal. I think he set the deadline, July 21st. We were supposed to have an agreement in place. He was going to, I think, negotiate a victory on tariffs.
Yes.
I believe that was the promise, and it hasn't worked out. In fact, it's been a dismal failure. I mean,
You know what the irony is, Mark?
sure.
Think back to November of 2024, right after Trump got elected, and Trudeau went down to Florida. He said to him, Canada cannot survive if you put a 10% tariff on our goods. And then Trump, of course, made his famous comment, well, why don't you
Yeah.
become the 51st state? But Trump was actually thinking at the time about 10%. And here we are now with much bigger tariffs on things that we never had tariffed before. And no trade deal. USMCA is actually up for renegotiation in 2026. I could see Trump just saying, we're not going to bother. We'll make a deal with Mexico. See, you wouldn't want to be a. Because the Mexicans have played this very well.
Yes.
She's a leftist. I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her, but she's played this very well. And she's told Canada, no, we're not making a bilateral agreement with you. And the reason is she doesn't want it. She understands you don't poke the bear. Even if she wanted to, she wouldn't do it. But I don't see there's anything in it for her to make a separate deal with Canada. There's
No.
nothing in it.
I mean, you want access to that huge market. What have
That's
we
right.
got? 41 million people. And she's looking at, well, do I want to cut a deal with you and run the risk of not cutting a deal with the Trump administration, not having access to hundreds of millions of American consumers? Yeah, that's an easy decision to make.
Right. I didn't take a genius to figure out that she wasn't going to go with it. I was dumbfounded that he actually publicly stated that that was his intention to go to Mexico and try to cut a bilateral deal with her. This tells me a couple of things. Number one, he's used to being in business where you can say something and it happens. Trump
Yeah.
kind of made a bit of that mistake in his first term, and he's kind of learned that that's not exactly how it works. You have to be surrounded by people who actually will do the things that you want done and agree with you. That's what's changed this time. This guy hasn't figured this out yet, that when you're in politics, it's not exactly how it works unless you. And the odd thing is that prime ministers have a great deal of political control, but they don't control everything. And they surely don't control what goes on outside of their country. That's the problem for him.
And if Carney really wants to make a deal with the United States, and I think he does want a deal, he's got to start looking at Doug Ford as a major problem, as a loose cannon, a guy who just needs to shut the hell up until we get a deal done. And this is one example where he may have blown it for the entire country. So what happens now between those two?
I'm actually hoping that you're correct, that he will call up Doug and say, lay off, just be quiet, stop doing this. I don't think Doug can, I don't think he'll do it. My feeling is that he is being told that somehow what he's doing is going to make things better, that he knows how to handle Trump, which clearly he doesn't, because everything he's done has done nothing but enrage Donald Trump. And I can tell you that comes pretty close to from the horse's mouth to people that I've spoken to over the last few months. He's done nothing but antagonize Donald Trump, even more than Carney. He's not. I had a back and forth with a very good friend of mine who's a very smart political person who thinks that Trump likes Carney. And I said, no, you're not right about that. He doesn't like Carney. He prefers Carney because he sees him as weak and pliable. He doesn't hate him, but he doesn't like him. And I said, what he doesn't like about him is a couple things. One, he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, which Trump never likes. And secondly, he's an elitist, WEF, globalist snob, overeducated snob who looks down his nose at Donald Trump. Okay. And those are the people that Trump dislikes more than anything. He would far prefer having a cup of tea while somebody else is drinking something alcoholic because he doesn't drink, with a cab driver, a waiter, a waitress, or a construction worker, a real person, than sitting and spending an hour with these guys. He would prefer it. He has to do it because he knows what his job is. He's a guy who's dealt with the highest of the high in business his whole life. But his real preference are regular people. And you can tell by the way he interacts with them. If you watch him when he goes out and talks to the people, you can see he's genuinely listening to them and he's genuinely engaged with them because he likes them. People like Carney he has to meet with. So as I said, I don't think he hates him, but I don't think that people said he has great respect for him. Maybe he had respect for him when he was the head of Brookfield, But now he's looking at him saying, "This guy don't know nothing about politics. He's pretty pathetic."
Yeah,
And I think that hurts us really badly.
especially since a premier has done what he has done.
Yeah.
That will be something that Trump sees as it's on Carney because Carney doesn't have control over these people. Now, granted, it's different levels of government, you know, but he may see this as a failure by Carney not to hold back forward. What do you think?
Well, so it would be, for example, like if Trump had to say to J.B. Pritzker or what's her name, Gretchen Whitmer or Kathy Hochul, stop talking about trade with Canada. Have you heard a single governor bring that issue up? Well, there's two reasons why they haven't. One, they know that's not their wheelhouse and they wouldn't do that. And two, they don't really care that much. The mistake that Canadians make is they think that the United States, people get up every morning and say, "What's Canada doing? Let's find out what's going on in Canada." I said the only time they think about Canada is when the Stanley Cup finals come around and only if there's an American team in there.
And the World
Okay.
Series, we have a Canadian
And that,
team
while
in
the
there.
World Series are looking at the Jays saying, "How the hell did they get in there?" Okay. But you don't, I assure you, they're not rooting for the Jays. Okay.
There are
It's a
rumors.
non-start.
There are rumors that they hate LA so much that they're rooting for the Jays. I don't
Well,
know if it's
that
true.
might be the people in New York Yankees fans who don't like the Dodgers from the old days.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, honestly, but my point is they really don't think about Canada the way that Canadians seem to be obsessed to an unhealthy degree with the United States.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
every day they wake up and that seems to be the number one thing in their minds these days. I don't know that it was always, although I will tell you that when I came to Canada in 1987, what struck me, and I've told you this before, was the anti-Americanism
Yeah.
that was there. It kind of faded off for a long time, and it's back again in spades, and much worse even than it was when I first came here. People are pretty open about their distaste for Americans, and I don't actually. I'm not. I used to be just kind of gobsmacked by it, never said anything. Now I just talk back. So I figure, what do I have to lose? I'm leaving anyway, right?
Georgianne, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really do appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Great to talk to you, Mark.
Georgianne Burke. All right, that's it for this edition of Straight Up with Mark Petroni. Appreciate you tuning in. Let's do it again real soon, shall we? Bye-bye for now.